A millionaire heard a poor little girl speaking 8 languages, instantly gives her full scholarship. Enjoy the story. The marble floor of the Grand Imperial Hotel gleamed like polished ice under the chandeliers, their crystal teardrops catching the morning light and scattering tiny rainbows across the lobby. 9-year-old Eva Mason pressed her back against the cool stone pillar, trying to make herself invisible. Her faded blue dress hung loose on her thin frame, the hem mended so many times it resembled a patchwork quilt. Her dark hair, pulled back with a fraying red ribbon, framed a face too solemn for someone so young. She clutched a tattered notebook to her chest like armor, her knuckles white with effort. Between her and the gleaming marble stretched an invisible line, the boundary between those who belonged in this palace of luxury and those who merely cleaned it. Eva's mother, Margaret, had been scrubbing toilets and changing sheets at the Grand Imperial for 3 years now. On days when their elderly neighbor Mrs. Winters couldn't babysit, Eva would hide near the service entrance, staying out of sight while her mother worked. The hotel manager, Mr. Hargrove, had made it abundantly clear what would happen if he ever caught sight of staff offspring in the guest areas. But today their regular babysitter had called in sick, and Eva's mother had no choice but to bring her along with strict instructions. Stay by the service door, don't make a sound, and work on your studies. Eva had nodded solemnly, understanding the weight of her mother's precarious employment. The notebook she clutched contained her secret treasures, page after page of careful notations in different languages. Russian verbs conjugated in neat columns, Arabic phrases with pronunciation guides, Mandarin characters practiced over and over. Languages had always come easily to Eva, like breathing. She'd taught herself from discarded textbooks and library copies, soaking up vocabulary and grammar rules with an unquenchable thirst. In the cramped one-bedroom apartment she shared with her mother in the shabby part of downtown Chicago, languages were her escape, her ticket to worlds beyond their leaking ceiling and temperamental radiator. A commotion near the grand reception desk pulled Eva from her thoughts. A well-dressed Asian couple gesticulated frantically at the concierge, their voices rising in panic. The man in the tailored suit behind the desk spread his hands in helpless confusion. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." The woman tried again, her words tumbling out in desperate Mandarin. Eva recognized the language instantly. She'd been studying it for months. "Woman de Bujenla," the woman repeated, tears threatening to spill. The lobby staff exchanged bewildered glances. A security guard approached, asking the couple to calm down in slow, loud English, as if volume might bridge the language gap. Eva bit her lip, knowing she should stay hidden. But the woman's face, the naked fear in her eyes as she clutched a small blue teddy bear to her chest, made something shift inside Eva's heart. Before she could reconsider, she stepped out from behind the pillar. "Excuse me," she said softly to the concierge, her voice barely audible above the commotion. "I can help. She's saying their son is missing. He's 4 years old and was wearing a green shirt with dinosaurs. He wandered off while they were checking in." The lobby fell silent as every head turned toward the small, ragged girl who had materialized like a ghost in their midst. Eva swallowed hard but lifted her chin, turning to address the couple directly in perfect Mandarin. "我能帮助你找到你的儿子," she said gently. "我是 Eva. 请告诉我他的名字." The couple's eyes widened in astonishment. The woman grasped Eva's hands, her relief palpable as she poured out details about her missing son, Chen Wei. Eva listened carefully, then translated for the stunned hotel staff. Within minutes, security was mobilized, and Eva stayed by the couple's side, her small voice carrying their fear and hope across the language barrier. 20 minutes later, little Chen Wei was discovered in the hotel gift shop, mesmerized by a display of toy airplanes. His parents' joy erupted in a flood of grateful Mandarin that Eva translated with a shy smile. The tension in the lobby dissolved, like sugar in warm tea, but not everyone was pleased by the resolution. "What is the meaning of this?" The sharp voice cut through the celebration like a knife. Mr. Hargrove, the hotel manager, strode across the marble floor, his polished shoes clicking ominously, his gaze locked onto Eva like a missile finding its target. "Who let this child in here? This is completely unacceptable." Eva shrank back, her momentary courage evaporating. She knew what this meant. Her mother would lose her job. They couldn't afford that, not with the rent due next week and her mother's medication costs. "Sir, I'm sorry," she began, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to help." "This isn't a playground," Mr. Hargrove continued, his face reddening as hotel guests turned to watch the scene unfold. "Where is your mother? She knows the rules about bringing children to work. This is grounds for immediate termination." The Asian couple tried to intervene, but the language barrier resurged as Mr. Hargrove waved away their protests. Eva felt tears burning behind her eyes, but refused to let them fall. She had to be strong, like her mother always told her, but inside her heart was crumbling. This was all her fault. Just as Mr. Hargrove reached for Eva's arm to escort her to the staff area, a commanding voice rang out across the lobby. "Hold on just a minute." The crowd parted as a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair and an impeccably tailored charcoal suit approached. Richard Thornton, billionaire tech investor and hotel regular, moved with the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. His keen grey eyes assessed the situation in seconds, coming to rest on Eva's face with unexpected gentleness. "I believe this young lady just solved a significant problem for your establishment," Mr. Thornton said, his deep voice resonating with precision and power. "Perhaps instead of threatening her, you might consider thanking her." Mr. Hargrove's expression flickered between indignation and deference. "Mr. Thornton, sir, I appreciate your concern, but hotel policy clearly states—" "I wasn't asking about your policy," Mr. Thornton interrupted smoothly. He turned to Eva, his expression softening. "Young lady, what's your name?" Eva swallowed, the lump in her throat. "Eva Mason, sir." "Eva," he repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, how many languages do you speak?" She stared at her worn sneakers, suddenly self-conscious. "8, sir, well, 7 fluently. My German still needs work." A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Mr. Hargrove scoffed audibly. "That's preposterous. She's making it up." Mr. Thornton raised an eyebrow, then addressed Eva in flawless French. "Comment avez-vous appris toutes ces langues?" Without hesitation, Eva replied in the same language, explaining how she taught herself through library books and free online resources. Mr. Thornton switched to Russian, then Arabic, then Portuguese. Each time Eva responded without missing a beat, her voice growing more confident with each exchange. The lobby had gone completely silent, captivated by the unlikely conversation between the disheveled child and the distinguished businessman. Even Mr. Hargrove stood speechless, his earlier indignation deflating visibly. "Remarkable," Mr. Thornton said finally, returning to English. "Absolutely remarkable." He glanced at the Asian couple, who were watching the exchange with wonder, then back at Eva. "Why are you here today, Eva? Is your mother employed by the hotel?" Eva nodded cautiously. "She cleans rooms, sir. Our babysitter is sick today. I'm supposed to stay out of sight until her shift ends." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Please don't fire her. It's not her fault. We really need the money." Something shifted in Mr. Thornton's expression, a flicker of both recognition and resolution. He straightened and pulled his smartphone from his pocket, pressing a single button. "Janet, it's Richard. I need you to clear my afternoon." He paused, his eyes never leaving Eva's face. "Something important has come up. Something that can't wait." By the time the elevator doors opened on the 14th floor, Eva's head was spinning. Mr. Thornton had insisted on speaking with her mother immediately, and now they sat in his luxurious suite, while her mother, still in her housekeeping uniform, perched anxiously on the edge of a velvet armchair. "Mrs. Mason," Mr. Thornton began, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, "your daughter possesses an extraordinary gift. Do you understand how rare her abilities are?" Margaret Mason twisted her work-roughened hands in her lap. "Ava's always been smart with languages, sir. Even as a baby, she'd pick up words from the neighbors. We've got folks from all over in our building." Pride softened her worried features momentarily. "But we make do. I'm teaching her to be practical." Mr. Thornton's gaze traveled between mother and daughter, noting their identical expressions of quiet dignity despite their circumstances. "Practical," he repeated. Mrs. Mason, with respect, practicality would be the greatest disservice you could do to your daughter's potential. Eva's mother stiffened, her defenses rising. We don't take handouts, Mr. Thornton. I've always provided for my girl. This isn't charity, he countered firmly. This is investment. In talent, in potential, in the future. He turned to Eva. Tell me, what do you want to be when you grow up? Eva looked at her mother, then back at Mr. Thornton. I want to work at the United Nations, she said softly, to help people understand each other when no one else can. A smile tugged at the corner of Mr. Thornton's mouth. A worthy ambition. He leaned back, decision made. Mrs. Mason, I'd like to establish a full educational scholarship for Eva. Private school, tutors, educational materials, everything she needs to develop her gifts. Additionally, I'd like to offer you a position within my foundation, better hours, better pay and health benefits. He held up a hand as Margaret began to protest. This isn't pity. This is recognition of potential, both yours and Eva's. Why? Margaret's voice was barely audible. Why would you do this for strangers? Mr. Thornton was quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Let's just say I recognize something in your daughter that reminds me of someone I once knew. He smiled, but there was an old sadness behind it. Someone who didn't get the chance she deserved. Eva looked from her mother's stunned face to Mr. Thornton's resolute one. In the space of a morning, the trajectory of her life had suddenly, irrevocably shifted. What would happen next? Would they really let someone like her into a fancy school? Would the other kids laugh at her patched dress and second-hand shoes? What if she wasn't as smart as Mr. Thornton thought? The weight of these questions pressed against her chest, making it difficult to breathe. Yet beneath the fear flickered a tiny flame of something unfamiliar, something that felt dangerously like hope. That night, lying in her bed in their cramped apartment, Eva listened to her mother speaking softly on the phone in the kitchen. "Mom, it's happening," Margaret whispered, her voice cracking. "Everything we dreamed for her, everything we never thought possible." There was a pause filled with muffled tears. "She's going to have the life we couldn't give her." Eva clutched her notebook tight against her chest, mind racing with possibilities that had seemed impossible just hours ago. Outside their window, the city lights glittered like stars fallen to earth. For the first time in her young life, Eva allowed herself to believe that some of that light might be meant for her. 6 weeks later, Eva stood frozen before the imposing limestone facade of Westbrook Academy, Chicago's most prestigious private school. Students in crisp navy uniforms streamed past her, their confident voices and easy laughter highlighting her outsider status. Her own new uniform felt stiff and strange, the pleated skirt and blazer a far cry from her usual worn jeans and faded t-shirts. "You belong here," her mother whispered, squeezing her hand. "Remember what Mr. Thornton said? Your mind earned you this place." Eva nodded mutely, but anxiety churned in her stomach. Mr. Thornton's foundation had worked miracles in the past. Weeks, securing her admission mid-semester, arranging for assessment tests, which she had passed with flying colors, providing their modest apartment with bookshelves now filled with language texts and classics. But no amount of new clothes or books could prepare her for this moment, stepping into a world where children arrived in luxury cars and spoke of summer homes and European vacations. The school secretary approached with a practiced smile. "You must be Eva Mason. We're so pleased to have you join us." She extended a hand to Margaret. "Mrs. Mason, after you sign the final registration forms, Mr. Harrington, our headmaster, would like to meet you both briefly. Then I'll show Eva to her first class." Margaret gave Eva's shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "See, everything's going to be fine." But nothing was fine. Not really. Not yet. The headmaster's office was intimidating. Dark wood paneling, leather-bound, books and portraits of distinguished-looking men gazing sternly down from the walls. Mr. Harrington himself was tall and lean, with wire-rimmed glasses and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Miss Mason," he said, studying a folder open on his desk. "Your test scores are quite impressive for someone with your background." The slight pause spoke volumes. Mr. Thornton has been most insistent about your admission, though ordinarily we don't accept students mid-semester, particularly those without prior formal education credentials. Eva felt her cheeks burning. She'd attended public school until it closed due to budget cuts last year. Since then, her education had been a patchwork of self-study and free community programs, while her mother worked multiple jobs. "Sir," Margaret began, her voice tight with controlled anger, "Eva has been educated." Of course, Mr. Harrington interrupted smoothly. "I merely point out that there may be adjustment challenges. Cultural integration can be difficult." He smiled thinly at Eva. "We have high expectations here at Westbrook, very high. Not everyone can meet them." The message was clear. You don't belong here. Prove me wrong if you can. By lunchtime, Eva was drowning in a sea of hostile stares and whispered comments. Her accent, her hesitation when asked about family vacations, the way she clutched her new textbooks like precious treasures, everything marked her as different. In her literature class, when she'd answered a question about Dostoevsky's original Russian text, the teacher had looked startled before quickly moving on. At the lunch table, girls with perfect hair and manicured nails had shifted subtly to close any open space when she approached with her tray. Standing alone in the vast cafeteria, Eva fought the urge to run, back to their apartment, back to anonymity, back to a world where expectations were low enough that she could always exceed them. What had she been thinking? This wasn't her world. "You're in my seat." Eva looked up to find a girl with sleek blonde hair and cold blue eyes standing before her, flanked by two equally polished friends. Victoria Harrington, the headmaster's daughter and apparent queen of the 7th grade. "I'm sorry," Eva said quickly, gathering her things. "I didn't know. You don't know a lot of things, do you?" Victoria's smile was surgical in its precision. "Like how charity cases should know their place." The cafeteria had gone quiet, dozens of eyes watching the confrontation. Eva felt her throat tighten, shame and anger warring within her. "I'm not a charity case," she managed, her voice barely audible. Victoria leaned in, her expensive perfume cloying. "Everyone knows why you're here. Some billionaire felt sorry for the little hotel maid's daughter who can do parlor tricks with languages. It's all very Oliver Twist, isn't it?" Laughter rippled through the onlookers. Eva's vision blurred with unshed tears. This was worse than anything she'd imagined. "But here's the thing," Victoria continued, her voice honey-sweet with malice. "At Westbrook, we value more than just being able to parrot phrases like a trained monkey. We value breeding, class, things. So you can't learn from a book." She glanced at Eva's lunch tray. "You should try the other end of the cafeteria, the scholarship corner, where you belong." Victoria's friends giggled as Eva stood frozen, humiliation burning through her veins. She wanted to disappear, to run, to never come back. "Actually, I think you're the one who's confused about where you belong." The new voice was clear and steady. A tall girl with warm brown skin and a mass of curly hair stepped forward, positioning herself between Eva and Victoria. "Last I checked, this was a school, not some twisted social club with a superiority complex." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of this, Zoe. It doesn't concern you." "Funny thing about bullying," Zoe replied, evenly. "It concerns everyone with a conscience." She turned to Eva, smiling warmly. "I'm Zoe Washington. You're in my French class, right? Your accent is incredible. Come sit with us, we've got room." Before Eva could respond, Zoe had taken her elbow gently and was steering her toward a table near the windows where several other students sat. Unlike Victoria's polished posse, this group was more diverse. Different races, styles, energies. They made space without comment, and Zoe performed quick introductions. "Guys, this is Eva. Eva, meet the only people in this school worth knowing. Malik, our resident science genius. Sophia, future Broadway star. Daniel, who's probably going to win a Pulitzer someday. And Luis, who can hack anything electronic but uses his powers for good mostly." The group offered friendly nods and continued their conversation, absorbing Eva into their circle without fanfare. It was so unexpected, so simple, that Eva almost couldn't process it. "Why?" she whispered to Zoe when the others were debating the merits of the latest superhero movie. Zoe shrugged. My mum's the history teacher here. I've seen a lot of Victorias come and go. She grinned suddenly. Besides, anyone who can shut down Mr. Peterson's pronunciation in French class deserves respect. That was epic, by the way. For the first time that day, Ava felt something loosen in her chest. She wasn't alone anymore, and that made all the difference. By the third week at Westbrook, Ava had established a cautious routine. Mornings were still difficult, facing Victoria's icy glares and navigating the complex social hierarchies that seemed as intricate as any language. But afternoons had become something close to enjoyable, especially the advanced language sessions Mr. Thornton had arranged with specialists who came to the school 3 times a week. Her favorite was Ms. Rodriguez, the vibrant linguistics professor from the University of Chicago, who treated Eva not as a curiosity or a project, but as a serious scholar. Today they were discussing the nuances of Arabic dialectical variations. You have an exceptional ear, Eva, Ms. Rodriguez said as they concluded their session. Most people struggle with the subtle differences between Levantine and Egyptian dialects, but you pick them up intuitively. Eva glowed under the praise. I like listening to the music in languages. Each one has its own rhythm. Ms. Rodriguez studied her thoughtfully. That's exactly right. Language isn't just vocabulary and grammar. It's music, culture, history. It's how people carry their identity across time. She began packing up her materials. The International Youth Linguistics Olympiad is coming up in 3 months. I think you should consider entering. Ava's pulse quickened. Me? But that's for exceptional young linguists, Ms. Rodriguez finished firmly. Which you are. It would be competitive, challenging, but I think you're ready. She handed Eva a brochure. Talk to your mother, talk to Mr. Thornton. Think about it. As Eva walked home that afternoon, Mr. Thornton had offered a car service, but she had politely declined, preferring the independence of public transportation. Her mind buzzed with possibilities. The Linguistics Olympiad was prestigious. Winners received recognition, opportunities, connections. Could she really compete? Would she embarrass herself? So absorbed was she in these thoughts that she didn't notice the sleek black car pulling alongside her until the window rolled down. Eva? Is that you? Victoria Harrington leaned out, her perfect features arranged in an expression of concern that didn't reach her eyes. You poor thing. Walking home all alone? Daddy's driver can drop you off. It's no trouble. Eva hesitated, instinctively wary. In the week since their cafeteria confrontation, Victoria had shifted tactics from open hostility to a more insidious form of torment. Falsely sweet offers of help, followed by subtle humiliations, always carefully executed. Outside teachers' notice. No, thank you, Eva replied politely. I enjoy the walk. Victoria's smile sharpened. Suit yourself. Oh, by the way, I heard you've been invited to enter that linguistics competition. How exciting for you. Though I should warn you, Westbrook's reputation is on the line. Wouldn't want you to embarrass the school, would we? The car pulled away before Eva could respond, leaving her on the sidewalk with Victoria's poisonous words seeping into her confidence. Was Victoria right? Was she setting herself up for humiliation? What if she froze on stage or mixed up languages or proved that she was just a fluke, a curiosity, not a scholar? By the time Eva reached their apartment building, doubt had thoroughly eroded her earlier excitement. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs slowly, already rehearsing how she would tell Ms. Rodriguez that she couldn't participate after all. The apartment was empty when she arrived. Her mother wouldn't be home from her new job at the Thornton Foundation for another hour. Eva dropped her backpack by the door and moved to the kitchen for a snack, but stopped short at the sight of a large package on the table. The return address showed it had come from Richard Thornton's office. Curious, Eva opened it to find a state-of-the-art laptop computer with a note in Mr. Thornton's precise handwriting. For your linguistic studies and Olympiad preparation, I have every confidence in you. The world is waiting to hear your voice. Accompanying the laptop was a collection of advanced language software, books on linguistics theory, and a personal letter from Mr. Thornton expressing his belief in her abilities. The final line read, "Remember, Eva, extraordinary talent demands extraordinary courage. The only failure is refusing to try." Eva ran her fingers over the embossed letterhead, something resolving in her heart. She would enter the competition. She would prepare thoroughly, work harder than she ever had, and silence the doubtful voices, both Victoria's and her own. For the next 2 months, Eva's life became a whirlwind of preparation. Mornings at Westbrook, afternoons with her specialized tutors, evenings studying with her new laptop. The Thornton Foundation had arranged for her to work with Dr. Eliza Chen, a former linguistics Olympiad champion, who pushed Eva beyond her comfort zone daily. "You're not just translating," Dr. Chen reminded her repeatedly. "You're problem-solving, recognizing patterns, building bridges between language systems." Eva thrived under the challenge, her confidence growing with each breakthrough. Even Victoria's continued jabs couldn't penetrate the focused determination that now carried Eva through her days at Westbrook. Zoe and her friends formed a protective circle, celebrating Eva's progress and distracting her when stress threatened to overwhelm. One afternoon, 3 weeks before the competition, Eva was crossing the school courtyard when she overheard voices from behind a tall hedge. "It's all arranged," Victoria was saying, her voice smug. "Daddy called in some favors with the Olympiad committee. They'll be giving her an impossible task, a dialect so obscure even professional linguists struggle with it. She'll crash and burn spectacularly." "Isn't that kinda mean?" another voice responded uncertainly. "It's necessary," Victoria insisted. "This school has standards. We can't have some charity case from the slums representing Westbrook. She needs to learn her place." Eva stood frozen, Victoria's words confirming her deepest fears. It didn't matter how hard she worked or how talented she might be. People like the Harringtons would always see her as an intruder, someone to be put in her place. That evening, Eva sat silent at dinner, pushing food around her plate as her mother recounted a successful day at the foundation. When Margaret finally paused, noticing her daughter's unusual quietness, Eva confessed what she'd overheard. "I should withdraw from the competition," she concluded miserably. "I can't win against people like that." Margaret set down her fork, her expression shifting from concern to a quiet fierceness Eva rarely saw. "Eva Mason, you listen to me. People like the Harringtons have been trying to keep people like us in our place for generations. Your grandfather crossed an ocean with nothing but hope and determination because he refused to stay in the place others assigned him." She reached across the table and took Eva's hand. "This competition isn't about them. It's about you proving to yourself what you're capable of." "But what if they're right?" Eva whispered. "What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not as special as everyone thinks?" "Then you fail trying," Margaret said simply. "And that's still worth more than succeeding at being small." She squeezed Eva's hand. "Besides, you're forgetting something important." "What?" Margaret smiled, a fierce pride lighting her eyes. "They have no idea how extraordinary you truly are." The morning of the International Youth Linguistics Olympiad dawned clear and bright. Eva stood in the massive university auditorium where the competition would be held, clutching her participant badge. Around her, students from prestigious schools across the country adjusted their blazers and checked their notes one last time. From across the room, Eva spotted Headmaster Harrington and Victoria, the latter wearing a smile that could only be described as anticipatory. Eva's stomach tightened with anxiety, but she forced herself to look away, focusing instead on the competition guidelines being distributed. Each participant will receive a sealed envelope containing a unique challenge, the head judge announced. "You'll have 2 hours to complete your analysis and prepare a presentation. Judges will evaluate your process, accuracy, and insight." When Eva opened her envelope, her heart sank. Inside was a recording and transcription of a language so obscure she couldn't immediately place it, full of unfamiliar clicks and tonal shifts. A small note indicated it was Xhosa, a Nguni Bantu language with complex phonological features. Exactly as Victoria had predicted, they'd given her an impossible task. For a moment, Panic threatened to overwhelm her. Then Eva closed her eyes and took a deep breath, remembering Ms. Rodriguez's words. Language isn't just vocabulary and grammar, it's music. She pressed play on the recording again, this time not trying to understand but simply to listen to the patterns, the rhythm, the music of the language. And there it was, beneath the unfamiliar sounds, a structure she recognized. Patterns that reminded her of other Bantu languages she'd encountered in her studies. Not identical but related, like cousins in a linguistic family. With renewed determination, Eva pulled out her notebook and began mapping connections, identifying repeated sounds, noticing structural similarities to languages she knew better. The panic receded as she lost herself in the puzzle, building bridges between the known and unknown. When time was called, Eva had filled pages with her analysis, not perfect, not complete, but thoughtful and methodical. As she gathered her materials for the presentation phase, she caught Victoria watching her with narrowed eyes, clearly surprised that Eva hadn't broken down in tears. The presentations proceeded alphabetically by last name, meaning Eva would present near the middle of the competition. She sat through the earlier presentations, impressed by the other young linguists, but also increasingly confident in her own work. These students were talented, yes, but she belonged among them. When her name was called, Eva approached the podium steadily, setting up her materials with calm efficiency. The panel of judges, distinguished linguists from major universities, watched impassively as she began. Good morning. I was given the task of analyzing a sample of Xhosa, a language I've had limited exposure to previously. She smiled slightly. But languages don't exist in isolation. They're connected by human experience and historical development. Eva proceeded to present her analysis, explaining her methodology of finding connections between Xhosa and other Bantu languages, identifying regular sound shifts, and using these patterns to decode unfamiliar elements. She demonstrated how she'd recognize distinctive click consonants and tonal patterns, mapping them to meaning through careful observation. Rather than seeing unfamiliarity as a barrier, she concluded, I approached it as an invitation to deeper understanding, to find the shared humanity beneath linguistic difference. The silence when she finished felt absolute. Eva's heart pounded as she waited for the judge's response. Remarkable approach, said the head judge finally, leaning forward with interest. Most of our participants attempt direct translation with reference materials. Your method of comparative linguistic analysis shows unusual sophistication. He made a note on his pad. I'm curious, how did you recognize the relationships between Xhosa and other Bantu languages so quickly? The rhythmic patterns, Eva explained. Every language family has a particular cadence, a shared musical structure. Once you learn to hear it, the connections become clearer. The judge exchanged glances with his colleagues. Thank you, Miss Mason. That will be all for now. As Eva returned to her seat, she caught sight of Headmaster Harrington's thunderous expression and Victoria's poorly concealed shock. Whatever outcome they had engineered, this wasn't it. The waiting period after all presentations were complete was excruciating. Eva sat with her mother and Mr. Thornton, who had both come to support her, trying not to interpret every glance from the judges' table as they conferred. Whatever happens, Mr. Thornton said quietly, you've already won by demonstrating your authentic abilities. No one can take that from you. When the head judge finally approached the microphone, the auditorium fell silent. This year's competition has showcased extraordinary young linguistic talent, he began. Each participant demonstrated impressive analytical skills. He paused, surveying the room. However, our unanimous decision for first place goes to the student who didn't merely translate a language, but understood its soul. Eva barely registered her name being called, or the thunder of applause that followed. In a daze, she made her way to the stage, where the head judge placed a medal around her neck and handed her an engraved trophy. Extraordinary work, Miss Mason, he murmured, shaking her hand. I understand you're self-taught in most of your languages. Eva nodded, still processing what was happening. Even more impressive. The linguistics department at Cornell would be very interested in speaking with you about our advanced summer program, for gifted students. As Ava turned to face the audience, clutching her trophy, she saw her mother's tear-streaked face. Mr. Thornton's proud smile, Zoe and her other friends from Westbrook cheering wildly. Even some of Victoria's friends were applauding, though Victoria herself and her father had mysteriously disappeared from their seats. In that moment, Eva realized something profound. She had not just won a competition, she had claimed her rightful place in a world that had tried to exclude her. 3 years later, 16-year-old Eva stood at a podium in the United Nations headquarters in New York City, addressing an international youth conference on cultural exchange. Her Westbrook blazer was adorned with honor society pins, and her confidence as she switched effortlessly between languages drew admiring murmurs from the assembled diplomats and educators. "Language is our first technology," she told the audience, her voice carrying clearly through the grand chamber. "Long before we invented the wheel or harnessed fire, we created words to share our inner worlds with others. In that sense, every language is a miracle, a bridge across the chasm of separate consciousness." In the front row, Margaret Mason sat beside Richard Thornton, watching her daughter with unabashed pride. Ava's journey from the shadows of the Grand Imperial Hotel to this global stage had transformed not just her future, but her mother's as well. Margaret now directed the Educational Access Program at the Thornton Foundation, helping identify and support other hidden talents in overlooked communities. As for Mr. Harrington, an ethics investigation following the Linguistics Olympiad had revealed a pattern of discriminatory practices at Westbrook, resulting in his resignation. The new headmistress, Dr. Amara Washington, had implemented aggressive reforms to make the prestigious school truly inclusive. And Victoria? After initial resistance, she had eventually reached out to Eva with a halting apology during their sophomore year. Their relationship would never be friendship, but they had achieved a respectful understanding, and Victoria had even joined Eva's initiative to provide free language tutoring to recent immigrants in their community. "The greatest barrier to human connection isn't language," Eva continued, surveying the rapt faces before her. "It's fear. Fear of the unfamiliar, fear of those we perceive as different from ourselves. Every time we learn to speak another's language, whether literally or figuratively, we dismantle that fear brick by brick." She paused, thinking of all the voices that had tried to silence her, and all the others who had amplified her instead. Mr. Thornton, who had seen her potential and invested in it. Ms. Rodriguez and Dr. Chen, who had challenged her to exceed her own expectations. Zoe and her friends, who had shown her that belonging wasn't about fitting in, but about being accepted authentically. And most of all, her mother, who had worked endless hours to give Eva a foundation from which to rise. "Each of us carries a unique voice," Eva concluded, her words resonating through the chamber. "When we silence any voice, we lose something irreplaceable, a perspective, a story, an insight that might have changed everything." She smiled, her gaze finding her mother in the audience. "No one should ever be invisible because of where they come from or what they lack. The world needs all of our languages, all of our voices, to solve the challenges we face together." As thunderous applause filled the chamber, Eva felt a profound sense of completion. The barefoot girl hiding behind a hotel pillar had found her place in the world, not by becoming someone else, but by embracing who she had always been. That evening, at a reception following the conference, Eva found a moment of quiet on a balcony overlooking the glittering Manhattan skyline. The cool evening air carried the distant sounds of the city, a symphony of human activity, of millions of stories unfolding simultaneously. "Quite a view, isn't it?" Eva turned to find Richard Thornton beside her, 2 glasses of sparkling cider in hand. He offered one to her with a smile. "It's breathtaking," she agreed, accepting the drink. "Thank you for making it possible for me to be here." Mr. Thornton shook his head. "I merely opened a door, Eva. You walked through it on your own power." He leaned against the railing, his expression contemplative. "Do you know why I approached you that day at the hotel?" Eva had often wondered, but never asked. "I assumed it was because you were impressed with my language abilities." "That was part of it," he acknowledged, "but it was more than that." He gazed out at the city lights. My mother was an immigrant from Poland. Brilliant woman, spoke 7 languages fluently. But in America, all anyone saw was her accent, her second-hand clothes, her job cleaning houses. A shadow crossed his face. She died never having the chance to use her gifts. When I saw you that day, your talent, your dignity in the face of dismissal, I saw her. And I saw a chance to right an old wrong. Eva was silent, absorbing this revelation. All these years she had wondered why a powerful stranger had taken such an interest in her fate. Now she understood. She had been a second chance, not just for herself, but for him too. Your speech today, Mr. Thornton continued, about voices and languages. It reminded me why this work matters. The Thornton Foundation has now helped over 200 gifted children from underprivileged backgrounds, and many of them were identified by your mother's program. She's good at seeing people, Eva said softly. Really seeing them. She got a lot of practice with me. They stood in companionable silence, watching the city lights reflect off the East River. Eva thought about all the twists and turns that had brought her to this moment, how a crisis in a hotel lobby had changed everything, how obstacles had become opportunities, how fear had transformed into courage. "What's next for you, Eva?" Mr. Thornton asked. "Cornell has already offered you early admission, or were you leaning toward Georgetown's International Relations program?" Eva smiled. The question of her future had preoccupied many people lately. Counselors, mentors, her mother. Everyone had opinions about where her talents would best be served. "Actually," she said slowly, "I've been thinking about something different." She turned to face him directly. "The Foundation's work identifying gifted children is incredible, but what about their parents? The single mothers working 3 jobs, the immigrants whose credentials aren't recognized here, the talented adults trapped in survival mode?" Mr. Thornton raised an eyebrow, interested. "Go on." "I'd like to propose a new initiative, a program that supports the parents while we support their children, education access for adults, career retraining, a community of mutual support." Eva's words gained momentum as she outlined an idea that had been taking shape for months. Breaking cycles of poverty isn't just about helping exceptional children escape, it's about lifting entire families. As she spoke, Mr. Thornton's expression shifted from interest to excitement. "You know," he said when she finished, "I think your mother would be the perfect person to help develop this, and we could pilot it in Chicago, where it all began." Eva nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly what I was thinking. She understands both sides, the parents' struggles and the Foundation's goals." "It seems you've found your next project," Mr. Thornton said, raising his glass in a toast. To voices long silenced, finally being heard, Eva clinked her glass against his, a sense of rightness settling in her chest. This was why she had been given these opportunities, not just to rise above her circumstances, but to widen the path. For others, have you or someone you know ever experienced being underestimated because of your background or circumstances? Leave your answer in the comments. 6 months later, Eva stood in the community center that had once been a run-down warehouse. In her old Chicago neighborhood, now transformed through Thornton Foundation funding, the space buzzed with activity. Adults attending classes, children receiving tutoring, families gathering for community meals. The Family Ascent program, as they had named it, was thriving, beyond their most optimistic projections. In one corner, her mother led a workshop for single parents on navigating educational opportunities for their children. In another, recent immigrants practiced interview skills with corporate volunteers. The walls were adorned with success stories, photos of program participants who had secured better jobs, returned to school, or launched small businesses. "Eva, come quick," Zoe called from the computer lab. "The results are in." Eva hurried to join her friend, who had taken a gap year before college to help establish the program. On the screen was an email from the Department of Education responding to their grant proposal for expanding the Family Ascent program to 5 additional cities. "They approved it," Zoe exclaimed, grabbing Eva in an exuberant hug. Full funding for 3 years. The news spread quickly through the center, triggering an impromptu celebration. As staff and participants gathered to share the moment, Eva found herself surrounded by the community, that had formed around this vision. People from different backgrounds, speaking different languages, united by the common goal of creating better futures for their families. Mr. Thornton arrived later that afternoon for their scheduled board meeting, but business was temporarily set aside for celebration. As Eva watched him chatting with program participants, listening intently to their stories, offering connections and encouragement, she marveled at how far they had all come from that fateful day in the hotel lobby. "Penny for your thoughts?" her mother asked, appearing at her side with 2 cups of punch. Eva accepted one gratefully. "I was just thinking about how everything connected. If Mrs. Winters hadn't been sick that day, if that little boy hadn't wandered off, if Mr. Thornton hadn't been in the lobby at that exact moment," Margaret smiled. "Life turns on small moments, but those moments only matter because of who we already are when they happen." She squeezed Eva's shoulder gently. "You were always extraordinary, sweetheart. The world just needed a chance to notice." As the celebration continued around them, Eva's phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Victoria Harrington, of all people, responding to Eva's invitation to speak at the program's upcoming fundraising gala. "Just confirmed with my assistant. I'd be honored to share how my foundation's mentoring initiative can partner with Family Ascent. See you next month." Eva smiled at the message. Victoria had undergone her own transformation over the years, attending Berkeley rather than her father's alma mater, establishing a foundation focused on girls' education, publicly distancing herself from her father's more problematic views. They would never be close friends, but they had found a way to channel their former rivalry into productive collaboration. Later that evening, as the community center quieted and staff began cleaning up, Eva found herself alone in the main hall. Soon she would return to Cornell for her sophomore year, juggling studies with her continued involvement in the foundation's work. Her life was full, purposeful, and expanding in directions she could never have imagined as a child. On the bulletin board nearby hung a children's drawing, a colorful depiction of the community center with stick figures of different heights and colors holding hands around it. Beneath, in careful lettering, were words in multiple languages: home, casa, maison, Zuhause, Manzil, Gia. Eva touched the drawing gently, understanding its profound truth. Language had been her first home, the place where she found belonging when the physical world offered none. Now she was helping create that sense of home for others, a place where all voices mattered and all gifts could flourish. The sound of laughter drew her attention to the door, where her mother stood with Mr. Thornton and several program staff, beckoning her to join them for a late dinner. Eva took one last look at the drawing before turning toward the voices calling her name. The quiet polyglot who had once hidden behind hotel pillars now moved confidently into the circle of light, carrying with her the certainty that everyone deserved to be heard and the determination to make it so. What were the most difficult moments you had to overcome to achieve your dreams? The world needs to hear that story. Tell us in the comments. In the years that followed, Eva's work expanded beyond what anyone might have predicted. By 25, she had graduated with honors from Cornell, earned a master's degree in international development from Georgetown, and established Family Ascent programs in 12 American cities. Her TED Talk on the economics of potential, arguing that poverty's greatest cost was the loss of human talent, had gone viral, bringing international attention to the Foundation's approach. But it was her work with the United Nations that brought Eva the greatest satisfaction. As a special consultant on educational access, she traveled to refugee camps and underserved communities worldwide, implementing programs based on the Family Ascent model. In each place, she listened first, not just to officials and educators, but to the people themselves, in their own languages, with their own voices. On a warm spring day in Chicago, Eva stood at the window of her mother's new office at the Thornton Foundation headquarters, watching as Margaret directed a team meeting with quiet authority. At 45, Margaret Mason had become a respected leader in educational equity. Her practical wisdom and first-hand experience invaluable to the Foundation's expanding mission. "She's quite remarkable," Richard Thornton observed, joining Eva at the window. Now in his 70s, He had gradually stepped back from day-to-day operations, focusing on strategic vision while Eva and others managed implementation. Just like her daughter, Eva smiled. I learned everything important from her: persistence, dignity, seeing people's true value. She turned to face her mentor. The board approved your succession plan yesterday. They're announcing it next week. Mr. Thornton nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. You'll make an excellent executive director, Eva. The foundation needs your vision for its next chapter. It's a big responsibility, Eva acknowledged, but I'm ready. She glanced back at her mother, who was now laughing with her team. We're ready. As they walked toward the conference room for their final planning session before the public, Mr. Thornton paused, his expression growing reflective. You know, Eva, I've been thinking lately about that day at the Grand Imperial. Do you ever wonder what became of that hotel manager? Hargrove, wasn't it? Eva hadn't thought of Mr. Hargrove in years. I haven't heard anything about him since he left the hotel. Mr. Thornton's eyes twinkled with mischief. Well, I happened to run into him last month at a service industry conference. He's managing a small motel in Wisconsin now. He chuckled, softly. The irony is he approached me about implementing a job training program for his housekeeping staff. Apparently, he's had a change of heart about investing in employee potential. Eva raised an eyebrow, amused. Did you tell him about your connection to me? I didn't have to. He recognized me immediately, and after a moment of visible panic, he actually apologized for how he'd treated you that day. Mr. Thornton adjusted, his tie still smiling at the memory. I referred him to your mother's department. I believe they have a meeting next week. The symmetry of it, the full-circle journey from that pivotal moment, struck Eva as both fitting and profound. Life didn't just move forward, it spiraled back on itself, offering chances for redemption, for new understandings, for different choices. That evening, Eva scrolled through application essays from the newest cohort of Thornton scholars, bright young minds from challenging circumstances, each with a unique voice waiting to be heard. This was the work that sustained her, that gave meaning to her own journey. Not just rising above her circumstances, but ensuring that others could do the same. Her phone buzzed with a text from Zoe, who now directed the Foundation's international programs. Did you see the news? Chen Wei just won the International Science Olympiad. Our little lost boy from the hotel grew up to be quite impressive. Eva smiled at the message. Chen Wei's family had maintained contact over the years, even establishing a scholarship fund of their own after their technology company went public. Another circle completed, another connection maintained across time and circumstance. As she returned to the applications before her, Eva's thoughts drifted to the countless invisible threads that connected all these lives. How one moment of being truly seen could alter a person's trajectory forever. The barefoot girl with the notebook had been given that gift, and she had spent her life passing it forward, creating a growing web of opportunity and recognition. The last application in the pile caught her attention, a girl from South Chicago, who had taught herself coding and built an app to help non-English speakers navigate city services. Her personal statement began, I've always been invisible to those with power and privilege, but I've also always known my own worth. Eva reached for her pen, writing approved for interview across the top of the file. Another voice waiting to be heard. Another circle waiting to begin. In her dreams that night, Eva returned to the Grand Imperial Hotel, not as it had been, but as it might be. The marble floors still gleamed, the chandeliers still scattered light like diamonds. But the faces were different. Children of every background moved freely through the lobby, their voices rising in a chorus of different languages. The barriers between service corridors and guest areas had disappeared. Everyone was visible, everyone belonged. And in the center stood a small girl with a red ribbon in her hair, no longer hiding but illuminated, her voice clear and strong as she spoke the truth that had guided Eva's life. That greatness doesn't always walk in through the front door. Sometimes it slips, in quietly, barefoot and hopeful, waiting for someone to listen. What have you done to help someone who needed a voice? We'd like to know. Tell us in the comments. As Eva approached her 30th birthday, the scope of her influence had grown far beyond what that barefoot girl in the hotel lobby could have imagined. The Thornton Foundation had become a powerful force for educational equity, its model of whole family support replicated by organizations worldwide. But more meaningful to Eva were the individual transformations, the thousands of children and parents whose potential had been recognized and nurtured because someone had taken the time to truly see them. On a crisp autumn morning, Eva stood at the podium in a converted warehouse that now served as the headquarters for the Foundation's global operations. Before her sat an audience that reflected the full spectrum of their work: board members and beneficiaries, corporate partners and community leaders, scholars and supporters. They had gathered to celebrate the Foundation's 15th anniversary and to launch its most ambitious initiative yet, a global network of talent identification and support centers in 20 countries. 15 years ago, Eva began, her voice steady and warm, a little girl stood in a hotel lobby, invisible to almost everyone around her. Today, that same girl stands before you as living proof of what becomes possible when potential meets opportunity. She smiled, scanning the familiar faces. But this isn't a story about one exceptional child who beat the odds. It's about changing the odds for all children. As Eva outlined the Foundation's expanded vision, she acknowledged the many hands that had built their success: her mother's practical wisdom, Mr. Thornton's strategic generosity, and the contributions of countless others who had believed in their mission. The new global initiative would bring their approach to communities from Nairobi to Bogota, from Bangkok to Tunis, creating pathways for talent to flourish regardless of circumstance. Language barriers, poverty, prejudice, these are not insurmountable obstacles, Eva continued, her passion evident in every word. They are simply challenges waiting for innovative solutions, and these solutions begin with a radical act of recognition, the decision to see people not as they appear on the surface, but as they truly are, with all their hidden depths and unrealized potential. As she spoke, Eva noticed a new face in the audience, a woman in her 60s with Asian features, listening intently from the third row. It took a moment for recognition to dawn, but when it did, Eva felt a surge of emotion. Mrs. Chen, little Chen Wei's mother from that fateful day, at the hotel, had traveled from Beijing for the anniversary celebration. Their eyes met across the room, and Mrs. Chen gave a small nod of acknowledgement, her expression conveying what words across languages could not. This circle is complete. We are connected. The story continues. In closing, Eva said, gathering her thoughts for the final message, I want to share something my mother taught me long ago. She said that greatness isn't about fame or fortune. It's about living fully into who you were always meant to be, and then creating space for others to do the same. Eva's gaze found Margaret in the front row, tears glistening in both their eyes. Today we recommit ourselves to that vision, a world where no voice goes unheard, no potential goes unseen, and no dream is considered impractical because of where it began. The standing ovation that followed carried waves of emotion. Through the room, pride in what had been accomplished, hope for what was yet to come. As Eva stepped away from the podium, she was engulfed by well-wishers, former scholars now leading programs of their own, partners eager to expand their involvement, community members whose lives had been transformed. But it was Mrs. Chen who Eva sought out first, making her way through the crowd to greet the woman whose son's disappearance had changed everything that day in the hotel lobby. Mrs. Chen, Eva said warmly in Mandarin, taking the older woman's hands in her own, I'm so honored that you're here. How could I miss it? Mrs. Chen replied, her eyes crinkling with emotion. Chen Wei insisted we come. He says he owes his science career to the little girl who found him at the fountain. She squeezed Eva's hands. But I think he owes it to his own curiosity, just as you owe your success to your own gift for languages. We simply had the good fortune to be in the right place at the right time. Eva nodded, understanding the profound truth in the woman's words. Talent and potential existed everywhere, in every child, in every community. What made the difference was whether that potential encountered opportunity, recognition, support, whether it found the light it needed to grow. As the reception continued around them, Eva felt a profound sense of both completion and beginning. The little girl who had once been unseen had become someone who helped others be truly visible. And in doing so, she had discovered the most important language of all, the universal tongue of human dignity and worth. That evening, long after the celebration had ended, Eva stood alone on the rooftop garden of the foundation building, watching the city lights illuminate the Chicago skyline. The journey from that hotel lobby to this moment had been neither direct nor easy. There had been setbacks and struggles, moments of doubt and disillusionment. But through it all, she had held fast to the truth that had first awakened in her. That day, that her voice mattered, that she belonged in any room, that the accidents of birth and circumstance need not determine one's destiny. The door to the rooftop opened, and Richard Thornton joined her at the railing, his silver hair gleaming in the moonlight. At 75, he moved more slowly now, but retained the sharp intelligence and compassion that had defined him when they first met. "Quite a day," he observed, gazing out at the city. "Quite a journey." Eva nodded, comfortable in the silence that followed, the ease of two people who had walked a long road together and understood each other without words. "I've been thinking," Mr. Thornton said finally, "about why some people see potential in others while most walk right past it." "What's your theory?" Eva asked, curious. He smiled softly. "I think it's because some of us know what it means to be unseen ourselves. We recognize the look because we've worn it." He turned to face her directly. "My mother died thinking her gifts didn't matter to the world. In helping you, I helped her too in some way." Eva understood completely. In her work around the world, she had observed this pattern repeatedly, those who had once been overlooked becoming the most perceptive advocates for others. 15 years, Mr. Thornton mused, changing the subject. "If someone had told me that day in the hotel lobby that we'd be here now launching a global initiative, I'm not sure I would have believed them." Eva laughed softly. "If someone had told me I'd be running a foundation instead of hiding from hotel managers, I definitely wouldn't have believed them." They fell silent again, watching an airplane's lights trace a path across the night sky. Below them, the city hummed with millions of lives, millions of stories, millions of unrealized possibilities. "What's next, Eva?" Mr. Thornton asked finally. "After the global centers are established, after this chapter is complete, what dream waits beyond it?" Eva considered the question carefully. Success had given her a platform, influence, resources. What would she do with them in the decades to come? "I think," she said slowly, "I want to change how we think about human potential altogether. Not just proving that it exists everywhere, but reshaping our economic and social systems to stop wasting it in the first place." Her vision expanded as she spoke, ideas that had been germinating for years taking clearer form. A world where no one needs to be discovered because everyone, as seen from the beginning. Mr. Thornton nodded approvingly, ambitious, revolutionary even. His eyes twinkled. Just the sort of impossible thing that begins with one person refusing to accept the status quo. As they turned to leave the rooftop, Eva took one last look at the city lights. Somewhere out there, countless children were falling asleep in circumstances not so different from her own childhood, uncertain futures, limited resources, abundant dreams. But because of the work they had begun, more of those children would find pathways forward, more voices would be heard, more potential would bloom. The barefoot girl with the notebook had found her purpose, not just in rising above her own circumstances, but in transforming the system itself, one recognition at a time. Congratulations, type 9 in the comments so that I know you stayed until the end with me. Thank you for watching, and until tomorrow's story on this same channel.